sometimes I think I could go like, you know, I'm hoping I can go a week without having to do a session story. Sometimes I can't go a day without doing a session story. Sometimes, like today, I can't even believe it, but there's 2 session stories. If you want to get right down to it, there's probably more like 10 session stories today. Typical Monday in the Trump administration, but this time what we have is this whole idea of this drug war from the 80s coming back to bite us in the ass because one of the drug warriors of the 80s, Jeff Sessions, happens to be the fucking attorney general of the country. So that kind of fucking makes it so like we have to do this thing. And part of that is him turning his attention on the opioid crisis in a way that harkens back to 19th century gulags, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea what the fuck this is about, man. But I'm nervous, all right? I am nervous as fuck, all right? Because I know that when you go hard against drugs on this drug war thing, the thing that happens is more people start doing drugs, and you know the value of said drugs, especially opioids, starts to go through the roof. So now you have more people that are able to do personal economies with like small dealing and shit, and they get addicted no problem or real easily. So what I'm seeing here is this is gonna mushroom cloud this opioid epidemic. If these buffoons in this Trump administration, namely the Department of Justice and everybody that's doing this, if these guys think that this is gonna do anything but exasperate the problem, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're looking at. They didn't look at the data from what they did before. All right, now they're talking about, you know, DARE. Let's bring DARE back. Let's give DARE $50 million in funding. Every measure you can look at made it look like DARE actually made it so more people did hard drugs. And what good has any of this interdiction ever done? You know, you're talking about the Nixon drug war. We're like 47 years into it, and not a single one of the drugs on the list has disappeared off the list. Not, as a matter of fact, there's like more versions of every one of them now. Not a single drug on the list has been eradicated, or let's just say it the other way. All the drugs on the list are more available, they're more potent, they're cheaper, and they're available in more areas. And I always say that because it's true. It's like, you know, if you lived in a small town like I do, kind of a little bit out of the way. I don't want to say in the middle of nowhere, but it's kind of out of the way. If you live out of the way like that, chances of you being able to score some heroin back in the 80s was really slim and none. Even crack, which was the epidemic of the day, you basically had to go to the next town over, which is Flint, to get your crack. They didn't sell crack in my little town that I live in. But if you wanted to get it, no problem. You could go to Flint and get it just 10 minutes down the road. And what you got now is that you can get crack in my town. You can get heroin, whatever you want. You can get it anywhere. It's everywhere. So the DEA, the Department of Justice, all these people know this, but they don't care because they just keep getting funded every year, no matter how bad their failures are. You know, now you got like opioids killing upwards of 64,000 people a year. Whatever, you know, to them it's just another day and another excuse to ask for more funding, to fight the good fight. And, you know, they don't look at it like what we're doing is actually exasperating the problem. They don't have that thinking built in. That's not part of their dialogue. And it probably never has to be. So Sessions unveils a new task force targeting opioid manufacturers and distributors. Let's check out the video. Maybe.
Our nation is facing the deadliest drug epidemic in our history. And make no mistake, what we're talking about today is not business as usual. It is the resolute policy of this administration and this Department of Justice to reduce these overdose deaths, to reduce addiction, and to reduce the amount of prescription opioids that are afoot in our country today. Today I'm announcing the Prescription Interdiction and Litigation Unit, PIL as we call it.
That's the weirdest thing I've seen out of Jeff Sessions yet. And I know there's a lot of weird ones. Like, I know when he cracks his little one-liners that he thinks is funny, like that KKK joke back in the day about how, oh, the KKK, I used to think they were cool until I found out they smoked marijuana. Now, I mean, when you see him crack these jokes, you can tell he's kind of uncomfortable and he's hoping that he gets a laugh, and if he don't, he's going to be really, like, heartbroken, but he's going to try his hardest not to act like it was ever supposed to be funny. Here, he genuinely is having a good time with this, and, oh, this is funny. Look, the task force that we invented, if you look at the acronym, it spells PILS. Isn't that clever? It's like, dude, that's the whole fucking story of the government. It ain't that hard to make acronyms that fucking, describe the bullshit that you're doing, or be doublespeak for that matter, which is mostly what right-wing bullshit is all doublespeak. Hey, the Patriot Act. The tax cuts. Yeah. So anyway, fucking this guy here is laughing his way into the most darkest hour of the drug war. That's what we're looking at right now, guys. We're heading into the darkest hour. The calm before the storm is over. The clouds are rolling in. I'm really freaking out here because I think this is really the beginning of something really ugly. And I mean, whether or not this administration is allowed to get away with whatever he tries to do at this point forward, the political capital is god awful. It's gonna be horrible. It's gonna be bloodshed at the polls. And as shitty as the Democratic Party is at trying to beat Republicans in the last few years, as proven by the thousands of seats lost, I think they're going to do really good in the midterms, just based on what's about to happen with this opioid bullshit. Because there's no fucking buddy in the country that is down with what these guys are talking about right here. Nobody. Nobody. I mean, you got to find somebody that has absolutely no knowledge of what's going on and be like, should the fucking government, through the law enforcement branch, go kick in the doors of like doctors and people that are low-level prescription pill addicts? I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of support for that anywhere by anybody. So laugh your way into the most oppressive, darkest hour of the drug war. It's here. And as far as him cracking down on weed too, like, might as well throw that in there. Sure, why not? I predict that within the next 2 months or maybe 3 months, there's going to be a major crackdown on some major marijuana thing somewhere, probably Colorado. And I'm sure they'll have an excuse as to how come they could say that they were circumventing state law somehow, or they connected a bag of weed that came from some major manufacturer or whatever to somebody that got in a car wreck in Alabama or some shit. Who knows? Whatever the fuck it is, they'll fucking figure some weird excuse out to try to make it sound good. But it's going to be like also that thing that Hugh Hewitt mentioned where, if you just punch them really hard in one of the big ones, then all the other ones will fall like dominoes, because, if you RICO them or something and just scare people and just make it so scary that people that are doing legitimate business in California and Colorado or wherever, they know that that the federal government ain't going to go raid everybody. But if you give them that fear that you're going to go, you're going to catapult boulders at one of the biggest, things going, yeah, they're going to want to, like, they're going to be a lot more afraid to do business. They're going to be a lot more afraid to get investment. Investors are going to be more afraid to invest money into the new cannabis businesses. So I do predict that there's going to be he's going to pull a wrecking ball out and at least hit one major commercial legitimate marijuana outfit. I can't really, I'm not Nostradamus over here. I'm not actually predicting some actual company or whatever, or location or any of this shit. I'm just saying that be on alert, man. This guy has moved from just talking about shit to doing shit. Because what this is doing shit. What they're doing is they're getting together with states that have sued pharmaceutical companies right out of the gate, and they're gonna help them out. Now, when I hear that, I think to myself, this is the same corrupt motherfuckers that are taking huge dollars from Big Pharma. Are they taking more money from Big Pharma than they are from big prison lobbyists? I don't know, who trumps who on that, but who knows, man? Like, are they gonna help the lawsuits? Are they gonna, when they look at the lawsuits and you're like, okay, we have Purdue, they're getting sued by like 300 different entities or more. I don't know. I'm just pulling that number out of the thin air, to be honest. I don't know what the real number is, but that's just kind of my educated guess. That currently, right at this very moment, Purdue's probably looking at 300 lawsuits going down from different counties, cities, whole states, and now the federal government's talking about jumping the bandwagon. Because, they'll say that, well, we've had enforcement issues, like this shit's costing us a lot of money to enforce, because we're busting people that are, with truckfuls of OxyContin pills and shit like that. Well, quite frankly, literally warehouses full of pills. So these guys, the DOJ's already knee deep in this shit. It isn't like they're not already making a lot of busts as far as pill mills, doctors prescribing like crazy, patients that have they call it doctor, what is that, doctor shopping? I don't know about doctor shopping. It's just basically doctor stacking is what they should call it. So anyway, back to the fucking clip.
Task Force. The PIL Task Force will focus in particular on targeting opioid manufacturers and distributors who have contributed to this epidemic.
Don't forget they're going after doctors and patients too. Just because he said that thing about that makes it sound like back in the 80s when they were talking about, oh, we're going to go after the kingpins. But meanwhile, they only bust people selling like nickels and dimes on the corner. That's kind of like the same thing. This is the facade that they want to give you. Oh, look, we're going to go after the big people, the manufacturers. If you want to go after the manufacturers, the only way you do that is you limit production. That's what the government is for. It's to control production. People always say that. Right-wingers, especially libertarians, are like, well, the government, the means of production and all shouldn't be involved. That should be free market and all. Well, okay, well, what's the corporations doing? What do they do about the means of production? Oh, I remember. They make the means of production anything but hiring Americans. So when it comes to this means of production shit idea, if you're on the right wing and you act like you're for the Republicans or the Libertarians, which there really aren't none, I'm for Republicans because they're for the free market and they want to get the taxes and regulations off of our backs. That only applies to the super, super big corporations. And when you're talking about the pharmaceutical industries and these people, come on. I don't know, I'm going off in the weeds here.
We will use criminal penalties. We will use civil penalties.
Criminal and civil penalties for the manufacture of pills. Now what he's saying is he's going to say, we
will use whatever laws and tools we have to.
So he's saying that if they're breaking the law, then we're going to go after them with whatever we got. But the problem is the laws are already written by them. We talk about how the big pharma runs the government because they're lobby, they're in everybody's back pockets and shit. And yeah, guess what? They made the rules for this shit. So there is no limit on the means of production for them. They can crank out 1 million Oxycontins if they want and just ship them to a town where there's only like 500 people that live there. I'm just way exaggerating, and I'm not saying that this has happened, but similar things have happened in the overproduction of these things. And one of my suspicions, and I don't think you got to be like a conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat lunatic to really believe it, is that they manufacture a shitload of fentanyl and they somehow get that shit to the underground. It's easier for that to happen. And, if you're thinking about Occam's razor style shit, like what's more believable, that or that there's a shitload of Chinese manufacturers pushing this shit through Mexico, and somehow that's the fentanyl they're always blaming the bad things that are happening with fentanyl on. Every time it's like, oh, this is that Chinese fentanyl. It got into the weed. It got into the coke. It got into the whatever, opioids, or people are stamping out fake pills now. Like I've heard of people dying in Florida from some fake Xanaxes. Why? Because someone stuck some fentanyl in there thinking, well, we can just put fentanyl in here with Flintstone vitamins and boom, someone will think it's Xanax. Well, I'm sorry that not everybody's capable of being a scientist and shit like that, but just about anybody can run a fucking pill press machine. So this fentanyl shit, pretty fucking dangerous. Me believing that it all comes from China, not happening.
Hold people accountable if they break our laws.
Well, and all he said there was that if someone's breaking the laws, we're going to get you. All right. So that's not telling me much, to be honest, guys, because the laws were written by the pharmaceutical companies to get away with whatever they want.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions just holding a news conference to announce new actions in the opioid crisis, many of these targeting manufacturers and distributors that many states in several lawsuits and now even the federal government arguing exacerbated the crisis because of deceptive marketing. Some of those state lawsuits have been targeting manufacturers including Teva, Endo, Allergan, Johnson & Johnson, and privately held Purdue Pharma, as well as distributors like Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, and McKesson. Sessions saying today he is starting a new task force to examine these existing state and local government lawsuits against manufacturers and distributors to determine if they can be of assistance, saying that this crisis has cost the federal government more than $4 billion for the Medicare prescription drug program alone in 2016.
So they're talking about Medicare prescription fraud costing $4 billion. Let's run that back. Is that what she said?
The federal government more than $4 billion for the Medicare prescription drug program alone in 2016. So,
all right, once again, we have somebody, I don't know who, whenever you look for motivation and means, you always look for who's benefiting monetarily. Someone is padding that number. Let's hear that one more time.
This crisis has cost the federal government more than $4 billion for the Medicare prescription drug program alone.
So I think what she's saying there is that the federal government is just going to go ahead and say that all the money that people spent, that they feel like went to opioids.
Crisis has cost the federal government more than $4 billion.
I don't know. That's saying a lot. So $4 billion in just malfeasance with opioids. I don't know what they're saying there, but they've had to enforce things. And she said that was from the Medicare, like there was some kind of fraud going on there, or maybe Medicare paid for all these opioids that weren't really necessary. Are they trying to say that opioids just are like a Schedule I drug now completely? That's what it feels like. There's a lot of legitimate fucking people out there that probably need their opioids. So this is really fucking shit up. And in the last like 2 years, this has been probably the doctors were getting the heads up, because I've seen a lot of people get cut off by their doctors. People that were on Percocet or OxyContin for over a decade, sometimes 20, 30 years on these pills. And I've noticed, if you've been around, you probably noticed that in the last 20 years, the last 10 years especially, they were really trying to wean people off of the ones that had acetaminophen in them, because they were discovering that over the long term, the acetaminophen was causing more damage than anything else, and it was basically destroying livers and kidneys and stomach linings and shit. So, they had to wean people off or get them out of things that had a lot of acetaminophen in it, because people, you don't realize when you're taking a 650 milligrams of acetaminophen in just one pill, that's more than you should take in a day every day. You should never take that every day. No way. If your pain is like that, then you need something else, because acetaminophen will kill you. Here's a quote from Sessions. In fact, we are already getting involved in these cases. I am announcing today that the department will file a statement of interest in a lawsuit against a number of opioid manufacturers and distributors for allegedly using false, deceptive, and unfair marketing of opioid drugs. And this is, again, I'm for that, but I think what's going on here that I'm not for is that whenever Republicans come in to power and it's the drug war and that's what they're dealing with, they go after the problem with a fucking sledgehammer. Hell, a jackhammer. Like, everything that has to do with the drug war is always jackhammer. There's no subtleties. There's no handling it in a way that would be responsible. They just go in there with a wrecking ball, man, and crush everything. And I hope that's not what's going to happen with the opioids. Because, like I said, man, if you want to, it's like quitting cold turkey, or do we wean them off slowly? That's kind of what this is like. It's an allegory. Yeah, we've already heard the other quotes. Basically beat the story up as much as I could. So if you want to keep updated on the opioid stories, like, I don't claim to really have too much of an opinion on all this, but I'm telling you, man, my experience with what's going on here is the numbers of people that are dead, the numbers of people that are going to be new addicts, all that's going up. With what they're doing, it's all going up. When you're scaring the opioid manufacturers big time, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to go underground, man. They're going to start selling their pills in the black market even more. And like I said, you don't got to be a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theory, like, whatever. I'm not putting people down for believing anything. After all I've seen in my life, there's no reason to, like, have any doubt or be a skeptic about anything you've been told. Unless it's, of course, that there's some kind of, like, magic fairy dude up in the sky. That you can be skeptical about. Other than that, like, I don't understand why there's even a stigma against conspiracy theorists and the theories that they behold. Sure, sometimes it can be dangerous to go down the road of the extreme skeptic, perhaps. But when it comes to saying that opioid manufacturers are pounding mad fentanyl into the underground, and carfentanil, which we've seen show up all over the country now, it's like if anthrax showed up all over the country. You'd be like, okay, let's look at the anthrax under a scope, see what it looks like. We can do DNA sampling on anthrax. I don't know what you can do on opioids, but you can probably tell who manufactured the fentanyl or the carfentanil or whatever by looking at it. Couldn't you? Maybe? I don't know. Bottom line is we got to do something about this fucking situation, and what Sessions is doing probably going to make it worse. That's all I got on this shit. Peace.